Hello and welcome to the UTV vodcast. My name is Carol Jordan and I'm one of UTV's news editors. This week in Westminster, the government announced a raft of measures with the intention of reforming the benefit system. One of the measures which has proved controversial is the proposal to tighten the eligibility criteria for PIP, or Personal Independent Payments, a move which has been heavily criticised by campaigners. Today I'm joined by Fiona Cole, Policy and Public Affairs Manager from Trussell NI, to discuss the potential impact of this announcement. Thanks for joining me, Fiona. So firstly, for those who might not know, what are PIP payments and how are they used?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and firstly, thank you so much for having me. PIP, or Personal Independence Payments as it stands for, is a non-means tested benefit. Now what we mean by non-means tested is that anybody can receive it. It doesn't, if you are working or if you're not working. And it's meant to help with everyday life. As you know, if you have a disability or a health condition, it can cost more for transport, it can cost more for heating your homes and just general everyday expenses. So there's two components. There is the daily living element, and then there is the mobility element. And it's the former, the sort of daily living allowance, that they are looking to reform.
And what has Trussell NI's response been to the announcement this week?
I mean, first and foremost, we stand and we support everybody with open arms that may be looking at these cuts and thinking how it's going to affect them or their families. We always say that our social security system should be a just and compassionate security system for when people need support the most. This is contradictory to everything that the social security system should stand for. These are the most vulnerable people in society, and if we always stand up and say that's how we're measured, then it is really critical that we stand up to these cuts. We are deeply concerned about the re-evaluation of PIP. We're deeply concerned about the 18 to 22-year-olds who will no longer have access to the health component of universal credit. And first and foremost, we say that these are decisions that can be changed. We have 1 year until these are meant to be implemented, and we have a 12-week consultation.
So what are service users telling you about their thoughts around this announcement and actually how it might impact upon them?
Absolutely. Yeah. The people I've spoke to are terrified. They are literally terrified. Nobody wants to be on benefits. It's not a luxury, it is a lifeline, it is survival. It is constantly saying, how am I going to pay for this and how am I going to pay for that? How am I going to make sure that my children are fed, that they're warm and that they're happy? And it's in that order. If you take away somebody's lifeline on already such slim margins, the thought of it is just absolutely soul destroying. People are already saying that they will not know how they will survive. People have said that their mental health has suffered even at the thought of it, to the point that it's debilitating. We need to make sure that these people know first and foremost that they are not alone, and that we will continue to support everybody who comes through our doors. If you have a disability, you're 4 times more likely to use a food bank. If you have a disability or long-term health condition, you're 3 times more likely in your life to suffer hunger and hardship. That's not right in a just society. So we will always stand with you, and to know that we will go absolutely every single part of this journey. We will elevate their voices, we will represent them at Stormont and when in the likes of these cuts in Westminster, and we'll make sure that people have the essentials, not just to survive, but to have a dignified life for themselves and their family.
And you've issued what you've described to me as a little bit of a call to arms. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when these cuts were announced, ourselves and Scope Disability came together across the UK and said that we want every single person to contact their MP, to use either our website, it's on our landing page, that you literally just have to put in your postcode and then it will send the letter, you can personalise it. But to say that this is something that as a society we do not stand for. We do not stand, we protect our vulnerable, we protect our brothers and sisters, our mothers, who we care for, our elderly. We do not just sort of sort of make them out to be something they're not. This isn't about getting people back to work. We want people, and people who are on disability benefits want to, but until the system allows them to be supported, to have flexible working, to have care and legislation that allows people to do both roles, taking away their benefits isn't going to change that. So we do say, contact your MP, say enough is enough, make sure your MP is standing up. As far as we know, all Northern Ireland MPs oppose these cuts, and we say that we will stand together with you to do that. But it takes the nation, it takes a community, and we want everybody to stand with us to do so.
I suppose, just playing devil's advocate for a minute, the cost of benefits to the UK has risen. It's spiraled in the past sort of 10 to 15 years. And I guess there's an argument and a logic that, the books have to be balanced. We can't keep going on spending. And what would your response be to that counter argument?
Of course, and it is a concern, and the figures that Labour government did give, that if they don't reform somewhat, then they will just continue to amount. What we would say is that you need to invest into getting people into education. We saw a couple of years ago when European social funding cut most programmes in Northern Ireland for young people who are not in education, employment or training, classified as NEET, young people with disabilities to be supported. That once you remove those structures, those people were unable to sustain their employment or get a just interview. Now, what we did welcome in Trussell was that they are looking to invest about £1 billion into supported employment. So we are saying that is welcome, and there's reforms that can be made. We're also saying that they are looking to increase the baseline of universal credit for everybody to around about £65 a month. Now, in 3 years' time, with inflation, that may not be as good as it is today, but we do welcome those commitments. But what we have to start doing is societal change, our attitudes, and we see it every time we speak to people who have disabilities, of that they are overlooked because people are enablers. They see the wheelchair, they see the reasonable adjustments they need, they see the learning disability and the extra cost that may have, and the fear of the unknown instead of the quality of the person. So let's look at reforming that. Let's look at, as I say, carers legislation that allows them flexible working, so that if they have to go to hospital with their loved one, that they won't lose their job. We were in the food bank the other day and a parent said to me, I want to work. I loved working. It was me, not my mummy self. But I can't because my child has autism, and 3 times a week I'll be called to come to the school and no employer will look at me. So let's look at that instead of cutting and villainising these people, which we don't want. These are vulnerable people. We need to support them right now.
You talk about speaking to people in the food bank, and of course Trussell NI doesn't just work in lobby and policy, but also right on the front lines as well. What are you seeing in terms of poverty and the trends in Northern Ireland at the moment?
Yeah, poverty is always seen as this sort of stereotype of somebody on benefits, and maybe they've made bad choices in their life. Poverty is not that. Poverty is the working poor. In fact, more of our food banks today say that increasing number of people that said, I used to donate to you and now I need to use your facilities, your support, is really, really concerning. This sort of motive that governments have of, if you just work you'll be okay, strap up your bootstraps and get through it. Rising costs of electricity, of insurance, of utilities, of mortgages, people that are not eligible for universal credit because they're earning too much are dwindling their savings and they have no more to give. They can't budget anymore. So we're seeing people who are in a lot of hidden poverty. We know that the housing list and the waiting for social housing is astronomical. We know it's about 45 to 55,000 people, individuals, and 48,000 households. These people are forced into private housing. they're petrified to complain of damp and mould and their children are getting sick. But if they do, what if their landlord increases their rent? Where will they go from there? So poverty is not one thing. It's a part of our system, and it's something that we all need to recognise and to sympathise that it's your neighbours, it's your community. Something about this beautiful country that we live in is that we do recognise the value of our community and that we always support each other in need. So poverty is no different, even if it's seen or hidden.
And what would you be calling for? What do you think needs to change in order to sort of reverse that trend of growing low income and the need, I think, for people to seek support, like going to a food bank? What needs to be done?
I mean, ourselves, we are just one part of a very intricate puzzle. We know that last year 93,000 emergency food packages were given out. We always say we can identify the need of what people are using, but actually what is the regional need, and we do a lot of research into that, and we find that 200,000 people in Northern Ireland face hunger and hardship in today. 62,000 of those are children, 114,000 of those are in disabled families. So that's just something that is fact. We know that. We work with the Department for Communities and we understand the difficulties that the executive are facing right now. But we know that these people are suffering right now. And we know that the cost, as according to the Northern Ireland Audit Office, that the cost of child poverty is up to £1 billion, £400 million in direct services. So we're dealing with this already. So we and the whole community and voluntary sector and the faith sector are all calling for the publish and the resource of an anti-poverty strategy. We know it's so close, frustratingly close.
Will strategies work though?
Absolutely not if they're not resourced, if they're not implemented, and if they're not an executive made. And we call on the Minister to advocate for this and to welcome us as sometimes a critical friend, but most importantly an advocate for the people that need it. We need to see that strategy to look at sort of, as we say, housing. Local housing allowances is a sort of Westminster, but what we can start looking is how do we keep people in their homes? How do we help people that are in rent arrears? We look at the 5-week wait. There is discretionary support here in place. We need to make sure everybody knows that there is a grant available to help you with that 5-week wait. We need to make sure that we look at things like the 2-child cap and what can we do here. But also 50% of people who come to Food Bank have never had money advice or any sort of advice to help them. And it could be as simple as budgeting. I know certainly I would help, I would avail of that support, but also what can you do with the debt? How can we help manage it? How can we write off debt? Last year alone, Trussell was able to reclaim £650,000 of not unclaimed, but sort of, it's called income maximisation. So you're not getting what you're entitled to as a person. So we need to look at this holistically. We also need to look at the early years of life, that this is a life cycle approach, and to look at education to get the best start in life. Children are the victims of poverty, and then it becomes an intergenerational trauma. There's so much that we want to do with the government, and there's so much that we are doing as community and voluntary sectors, but we want to work collaboratively in partnership and not against them, not saying that how dare you do this or why are you not doing that. Let's release that strategy and let's work together, because we are all working to make Northern Ireland fit for purpose. It's a beautiful, amazing country, and we just want to make sure that the most vulnerable are always supported in their time of need when they need it.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me today, Fiona. I think it's a huge subject. It's incredibly important, and it's good to know that there's some really great work being done.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's it from this episode of the UTV vodcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and you can always watch us on ITVX. Thanks for watching or listening. Until next time, bye-bye.